Mom, I like to propose a dinner optimization plan for 2026. Soccer practice every week. Get back late and you're stressed out about making something fast, but actually nutritious for dinner. When Ashley's mom picked me up, I noticed that she made Blue Apron. It came like a little kit. By the time it was ready, I still had shin guards on. And it was real food, fresh veggies, protein, actual flavor. Take her from the younger generation. We're innovators, keeping a couple Blue Apron meals around. Not the worst idea.
Get $50 off your first 2 orders plus free shipping with code STIR50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Welcome to No Question About That. We're going to talk about one of the craziest games of the season so far. I'm Ed, and I'm with Wayne. Wayne, how are you doing?
Don't know. I'm smiling, but I feel I've got that familiar feeling of like pit in my stomach where honestly I feel a little bit sick. Not to do with the events of the game, but just the prospects of impending change. And I hate that at United.
Yeah.
You don't want to see it turn around, and you just look at the events of the game, and I know we'll talk about it. And I just said before we came in, like I felt like none of the events in particular reflect on Ten Hag's decision making, apart from one with reaction to the subs. But you can't help but feel that when a game descends into that kind of chaos, and it's been too many times that that's happened. I mean, I know he said earlier in the week that he denies what happened against Spurs. He might deny what happened today, but unfortunately, definitely happened.
Yeah, I know.
I know we can talk about the referee, because I think there's a definitely
there's a lot to talk
about that. But I mean, I do think that it's a concerning defeat for him, a very, very concerning defeat.
Oh, sure. Look, United are 14th, so obviously we're going to talk about all the details because this is absolutely nuts as a game. And you could walk away from this game going, oh, bloody hell, we were unlucky there. Bloody hell, Ten Hag was unlucky. But we'll dissect some of it because it's not entirely that, but it's some of that. But in the end, sorry for the cliche, but football is a game of results. United have 1 win in 8. We have a 45% win rate since winning the Carabao Cup. This is relegation stuff. All our stats are absolutely in the toilet, attacking and defensive. The attacking ones are horrendous. They're sub-mid table. The defensive ones are even worse than that. So the underlying data is much worse than the actual results. Yeah. Has been that way for a very long time now. So what with stories of United meeting Javi, whether that's a temporary change or something more permanent, who knows? I mean, it feels like the clock's ticking, doesn't it? So just that alone, 14th in the table, 21st in the Europa table, 21st or 23rd, something like that. It's ridiculous enough that you can get that far down in any table, but you can. That alone would put Ten Hag under pressure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the game then, rather than the macro picture, because the first 45 minutes, United created 8 shots, 4 big chances, 4 big chances missed. That was real WTF stuff, from Garnacho's strike against the bar to Dalot missing an absolute open goal. You're just like looking at that going, how have we not scored? How is this possible?
And that Dalot chance was so poorly missed that you forget about Fernandez's header. You forget about the one where they hit the bar with their own player, and also the Rashford had a chance. It won't go down as a chance, but the ball fell to him so kindly, couldn't get the ball out of his feet. He was daydreaming, he was thinking about something else. The thing is, though, and I did tweet about this, I posted on X, because tweeting is no longer a thing, that United were playing well, they were playing good football, but then the pendulum starts to turn a little bit. You think, no, this is West Ham being really poor. And you tweeted, and I knew that this word would definitely come in when we're going to talk about this on the podcast, and when other people will talk about it, passive. United were already passive. They never took control of that game. It was never a strong performance that you said.
There's no structure to United's play. There's just no structure at all. The amount of brilliant chances we created in that first half were all to do with individuals.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I did some research at halftime because I thought this is obviously systemic and it's endemic. So let's have a look through the potted history of United under Ten Hag to see the last time we got to the hour mark, which we expect, like I said today, halftime, we expected United to be 3 goals up, right? I think that's a fair.
I think that's fair.
2 or 3
4
goals
big
up.
chances.
So when was the last time that United got to the hour mark in a game and there were 2 goals up and you thought, all right, they're comfortable? And I'll tell you the last time. It was Everton in March when we scored 2 penalties. Before that, it was West Ham at home, where the famous one where they're all sat on the sidelines.
Yeah.
So that was twice, and that happened like at the start of this year. Before that, it was Leicester in February last year, which was just before we won the Carling Cup, Carabao Cup. And it doesn't, I mean, we know that United have had trouble killing teams off anyway, but they've had trouble not through just being profligate. It's, it's an endemic part of the problem. They can't finish. They're not a good finishing team. And you do point the finger and say, well, the manager's brought in strikers. He brought in Vegos, which we know he wasn't meant to be a prolific striker. That was a desperate thing. But, Højlund, all right. The jury's still out on Højlund. I think he's still improving. He's still progressing, but he doesn't have the presence that we need to have. And Xerxes definitely doesn't, in spite of him assisting the equaliser today.
Yeah. I mean, this is not very important, but I'm going to carry on my campaign that assists should be weighted.
Yeah.
Midweek, I still think that's a heavy touch. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say it's a pass. And then today, he's obviously just missed the header.
Yeah,
so
he's tried to score and he's not scored, and Casemiro's took care of it. But, So, I mean, United have got a problem in doing that, and the problem with ones like that, like draws, is that you have to wait to see which way the evidence falls, to support. Is this a team that can't score chances, even though they create plenty of them? Is it a team that can't win games, even though they don't lose plenty when they're in a run of draws? Well, unfortunately, the evidence is telling us that, and also when they do create chances, is it a team that are dominating a game of football, or is it the team who they're playing against are passive themselves but can switch it up? Yeah. And West Ham switched it up, and
They did, and at half-time I was like, what will Lopetegui do? Because we've seen this film and we know how it ends, right?
Yeah.
Teams react to how United are playing, and Ten Hag is not able to adapt, right? It's like he goes into it with a plan, and then when he gets punched in the face, it all goes out the window. Really destroying my metaphors today, aren't I? The plan goes out the window, and he's not able to draw up a plan B. He just can't react. United went so passive after half-time when Lopetegui made 3 changes and completely changed up. They just went much, much more direct. And I don't mean long ball. I just mean bypassing United's midfield and using the runners. And I don't know. It's such a pattern that I don't expect it will change. And I mean, Ten Hag may not get the time to change it anyway. I mean, a lot of people were making fun of him in midweek because he said, I deny the Tottenham result because of the red card. I mean, it's the worst 30 minutes of football I've ever seen from United in that first half. Yeah. I mean, literally, the worst.
It was really bad, yeah.
It's so bad. So a lot of people made fun of him because of that, and kind of rightly so. But I kind of knew what he was getting at. But and I haven't seen today's post-match comments, so we'll see what he says. But he doesn't half harm himself sometimes with what he says, and there's just seems to be something about his personality. He's not got a lot of charisma, obviously. He commented on that before, but he just seems to get very, very defensive. And it comes across as someone who doesn't take responsibility, even if you're unlucky. And there's some ill luck today in that his players have not finished great chances they'd created.
Yeah.
And one of the most ridiculous VAR decisions you can ever have. I mean, just beyond words. But
before we talk
so you can say he's unlucky, but he never takes responsibility for the things he's in charge of, which is how the side is set up, how they adapt throughout the ebb and flow of a game, and the changes he makes.
Yeah, and I mean, like, obviously we are going to talk about the penalty thing, but in the flow of the game before that, I'm always someone who will come out and say that I'll back the manager. And I don't, like I've said, I feel gutted at the prospect of change. And I feel like it's probably inevitable at this point. I'm also someone who will, again, I feel like I'm just throwing out loads of caveats to support a negative opinion here. But I mean, you know that I will sit and I will talk about the language difficulties and I don't necessarily think that charisma is a bad thing, because lack of charisma, because although I do think it's a necessity for a Manchester United manager to have, but I think if you've got a separation from the press in whatever way that comes, if that is lack of charisma, then fair enough. But the lack of ownership over the way that things are going with the club, with the team on the pitch, because you cannot. The thing that Ferguson always said, and it's just Ferguson as a point of reference, is he would always talk about control. And Mourinho's a great person. Even like the other day, you knew that United were never going to win that game because Mourinho's a master of control over an environment and a situation. Ten Hag, through projecting his own lack of ownership by saying like all these things are down to different circumstances that are out of my control, you are basically you are absolving yourself of the control of being able to put it right. So in a game like today, when normally I would have a conversation with you about this and I would say, well, United did play well. But then you look at it a little bit more critically and you go, well, how much of that is down to the opponent? And you could tell probably from about 30 minutes that it was, once West Ham made the changes and they got more aggressive because United were never winning second balls. It wasn't a matter of them wanting it more. There was no desire. There was no point of them getting there to balls first or forcing the mistakes or anything like that. There were chances that were being presented to them and they just couldn't take, there was just lax defending. So once that change happened, again, I would come on here or on any podcast or any conversation and I would defend the manager if on the basis of saying the players should take responsibility for what happened in the second half. But we all knew what was going to happen from that 30-minute period when you knew United weren't taking the chances, and then you started to look at it and say, is this United playing well or is it West Ham playing poorly? And then the penny's dropping. So everyone was watching it. West Ham are going to make changes, and you know that they'll be more aggressive in the second half.
Right.
For United to be too reactive to that, and now Ten Hag will say that we played well and we created too many chances, and then a decision. When I think if we're being fair and we look at it, United had that game won. And it is their own fault that they didn't win it. We'll talk about the decision, and rightly so, it's one of the worst decisions of all time. But that's the thing now, and Ten Hag won't take responsibility for that because he's got plenty of excuses. There's plenty of excuses to hide behind. Set players should have scored chances because there'll probably be an IXG in there.
Two and a bit. I mean, it's sort of high. But look, I think your main point there, which is, by absolving himself of responsibility by never taking it, he stops being a leader, right? I mean, you're absolutely right there. He is not a leader. And he talks about, I'll go anywhere, I'll win trophies and all of that kind of stuff. But it just feels a bit wishy-washy. Like, win trophies now. I mean, which he points every second sentence. He says, I won 2 trophies. But show progress, show your ability to adapt to the changes that other people make. He should have anticipated today that Lopetegui would make significant changes at halftime, right? Has to realize that he's going to bring more pace into that game because United was just able to turn West Ham around completely. Like from the first minute, basically.
Exactly. You have to be in front of that. If you're a manager, a really top manager.
He's not, though, is he? Is exactly. He ever? We talk about passivity in United's team, but he's a bit like that too. And I know it's reductive just talking about his lack of charisma or the fact that he's kind of technocratic, but he doesn't half give off this vibe that he's not in control. He's not the main man. He certainly doesn't have the authority or aura, as the kids would call it today. I think on this pod I said he had like a riz, and there was someone in the comments on YouTube going, "You child."
You're trying to be in front of it and you're trying to relate. You're trying to get in front of it and be more proactive, which is a quality of it.
I think the problem is when you got a bloke in his 40s trying to talk like a Gen Zer, you do end up sounding like an idiot. So, I have my tongue fairly in my cheek here. But look, all these things, it contributes, I'm sure. Like, he may well be a very technically minded coach who understands stuff, although I have my doubts given the lack of structure in United's build-up and how long it's taken him to sort out our problems with the press. But he may well be a great technical coach, but he's missing the piece which says, I own this. I am in control. Ferguson, like even in the worst moments of Ferguson, like in that 2002 to 2005 period when we were pretty dreadful, we didn't finish outside the top 3. And you never doubted Ferguson was in control of things. I mean, yeah, there's some other problems during that period, but Ten Hag, I just never feel like that. He's missing something major.
The worst period of Ferguson was probably 87 to 98, and this is comparable to that. And the attitude of Ferguson in that period was very much things need to change and standards needs to improve. So now I'm looking at Ten Hag, and he's not singing from that hymn sheet. What he's saying is excuses. I deny that result happened. Once we get I've won 2 trophies. Once we get players back, blah 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 blah. And also the one thing that we haven't mentioned is that that he's part of a leadership team and not the absolute leader. Where even in the changing face of football, the manager still is the ultimate political figure at the football club. He has to be,
especially at United.
Especially at United, and to reduce yourself. And he's done that. He's reduced himself in that respect.
Yeah.
That you are making it very difficult for yourself. And so the point is that when you get to the chaos, like we've seen today, or we've seen in too many games this season, that it's so much chance. That last sort of 7 or 8 minutes again. And again, that's just, there's no rhyme or reason to what's going to happen in that period of time. It's definitely not by design. So by allowing yourself to be open to that so many times, you are sort of surrendering to something that is bigger than yourself. When I get it, like, look, this is a tough job, and I know we can talk about the nuance of the style of play and progress and everything like that. But he has won 2 trophies, and if we say, we judge him on trophies, then you can't do that yet. He won his trophies at the end of the season, and the trophies will be won at the end of the season. So there is a long time to go, and he's still in the competitions for that. However, it is a matter at this point in time. It is a matter of progress, unfortunately. And that's what we were judging him on in May. He bought time from the cup win and the nature of it, and now we are all looking at the progress. Now, the one thing I will say in his defence, and I know we're moving away from the game, the one thing I will say in his defence over since we've come back from international, is that the balance of the side looks so much better with a left footer. But that's just basic. I feel like if I can notice that, that's basic football observation, that the balance of a team, and all right, we played a right footer at left back today, but the balance of the team is so much better when Martinez has been playing over at that side, because it opens the game so much more and it makes it more problematic for opponents. But it's not strong enough, because that only works as an explanation if United are dominant in the way. Because, by the way, West Ham have been that poor all season. We're not talking about one game in isolation. We're talking about,
they've been absolutely rubbish. West Ham fans hate Lopetegui, and some of them calling for him to be fired. So
already, yeah. So the point is,
9 games into the season,
it's a similar thing that they've had with the last time that David Moyes went. That they're thinking the grass is greener and everything like that. So they've got that problem. So, and they've been poor at home all season, and we saw that in the first half. Now, a game in isolation against Manchester United is very good for teams like West Ham, because the atmosphere around it and the opportunity to instill change the thing, it's a very good mechanism.
It's a cup final, isn't it? The old
Exactly.
Yeah.
But United don't have that mentality about them. So they're susceptible to that. In the same way that, for years that we laughed at Arsenal for defeats like this. Defeats like this. And unfortunately we're there. And the mentality, like, I can accept this kind of mess of a run of performances and results. So obviously we're going back to different games like the European games, which have just been farcical, and the Spurs game and everything like that. And you look at them and you say, all right, if that's happening as part of an injury crisis, or if it's happening at the start of an era when you've inherited a mess, then you can understand all that. But it can't be happening at this point. It cannot be happening. Well, it can, but you've got to take ownership over it. And the decisions that you make in the environment and the changes that you make in the team have got to reflect the fact that you know that what we're seeing is not by design. Nobody thinks that this is by design. What we saw today, if United had won 3-0, then you would have gone, yeah, all right, that's a run-of-the-mill win, and it looked like it should have been that way. But United was susceptible to it. The leadership was nowhere on the pitch. It didn't come from the sidelines. And what you end up with is a moment in the last... You leave yourself susceptible to what happened in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the setup of the team, because you talked about balance there with Martinez. And I don't think he's a great left back, but it does create a more balanced side for sure. Whether it's Dalot or Mazraoui on the left-hand side, they both have a tendency to tuck inside. They're both comfortable doing that. I would say Mazraoui is even better than Dalot at being an auxiliary midfielder. Yeah. In theory, that should open up the pitch. Now, on the left-hand side, it did. We saw United attacking a lot down that left-hand side with Garnacho. On the right-hand side, it was the other way round. Yep. In that, if you look at Marcus Rashford's average position, it looks like he's tucked inside. If you look at his touch map, he's on the touchline, right? So the only time he got the ball was when he's wide. His expected goals and assists are about a third of what he gets when he's on the left-hand side. So he's just much less productive, and he's unlikely to go around the outside of a player. He just doesn't want to do it. It's not his inclination. If you could set up a system to make Marcus as ineffective as possible, that would be it. I mean, it's a perfectly designed system to just take him out of the game. Clearly, Ten Hag wants to stretch the pitch. Otherwise, Ahmad would be in the side. I mean, he tucks in as well. So he's got this idea that he's trying to make it as wide as possible. I think that's partly about transitions, ability to play in space on transitions. But, and I guess in a sense it works because Marcus is the decoy for Garnacho to create the space. And United were able to function some chances in that first half. But I still think Ten Hag's muddled about how he's thinking about what United are at the moment, right? We are a different side from game to game because he hasn't set on an identity by choice, right? He's not 3 years into this going, ooh, I'm not sure. He's decided that he's going to take it from game to game, which I think is a truly horrendous choice on his part. We just change from game to game. We're not setting in any kind of pattern. There are no structured patterns. Yeah. And like even for amateurs like us, who, albeit at our age, we've watched thousands of games, but we are still amateurs, but we can spot it. So, I mean, I know I'm not saying anything new there, but Ten Hag sets his team up in a fashion that there are too many square holes in round pegs. It's all based on individual performances, not on the system. And it's too susceptible to changes from the opposition and potential individual failures or poor performances. Yeah. And there's no systemic way of getting around that. So a lot of it from the beginning, the root cause is Ten Hag. Right? I even think some of the lack of finishing is his fault because it's not like, and I'm not saying we have to play like Manchester City, but we don't create chances that are repeatable patterns in the way that City do. And I almost think that when the chance comes, it's a surprise and players are snatching at it. You know?
Yeah, we concede chances in repeatable passions.
We do concede chances. We didn't concede chances from a cutback today, but it could have been. Yeah. All right, let's talk about the first goal because that comes a bit after half time. The West Ham have got on top at this point, and it's a breakaway. Who do we blame for this one? The fullback or De Ligt? I mean, both of them are Eriksen for letting the man run on his blind side. Or do we just say it's a good breakaway from West Ham?
No, I do think it was an avoidable goal. You could say De Ligt, but I still feel like the good that we've seen from De Ligt gives me enough evidence to absolve him of the blame of the case. Because when it's Dalot playing at the side of him, I've reached a point where I don't want to be too critical of Dalot because I've said it so many times that if you're not good enough to play for Manchester United, it's not necessarily a massive criticism because many players aren't. But there was too many times today where his positioning or his decision making in that split second were costly to us, And I'm not talking about the miss. I'm talking about defensively. And I feel like that was evident in the goal. He just got the wrong side of the player who scored, who Somerville, I think, scored the goal. So
Jimmy's son, right?
Is it?
So no,
I don't know. You're talking about. I don't know your frame of reference there. I don't know. So
Jimmy Somerville.
Who's Jimmy Somerville?
Jimmy Somerville, 1980s singer.
Oh, I don't know.
Very high pitched voice.
I'm much too young for that. I'm with the Riz.
You're absolutely not.
I'm with the Riz kids. What are you talking about?
Don't leave me this way.
So
you know it. Yeah,
well, Anyway, I'm not saying that it's a defensively terrible goal to concede. I don't think the blame's pointed at one individual player.
Yeah.
I think that we all take a point in that, and I do think it was. I think that's a systemic goal to concede because it's all resulting from the fact that we were so passive, and we allowed West Ham to influence the atmosphere and the environment, and what that does on the pitch, it heats the pitch up. And if they're more aggressive to the ball, as they were all over the pitch for that period of time, you're creating terror. You are invoking terror into a team that reacts badly to it. They don't stand up to it. They like, oh God, terror's here. Time to collapse. And that's what happened with that goal, unfortunately.
Yeah. West Ham fans are the most whingy in the league. I mean, there's some competition for this prize. Arsenal fans love a whinge, don't they? But West Ham fans just turn very, very quickly. It's like they think they're West Ham of the 1960s and they deserve to be at the top of the league or something like that. And they haven't been anywhere near the top of the league for 60 years. And there's barely a person in that stadium today that can remember when they were good. Like maybe some from the 80s. They had one season when they came like third in the 80s or something like that. Yeah, you remember that team?
The rivalry with United is, well,
there's a lot of clubs that think they're United's rivals, and there really aren't very many who actually are. But they were, in that first half, West Ham fans, turning, right?
Yeah.
But it didn't take very much. Just a bit of aggression, bit of positivity, get on the front foot, United being passive.
Yeah, it wasn't
suddenly them to get up.
It wasn't a particularly groundbreaking plan. Do you know what I mean? You could have even watched that game up until the refereeing nonsense. You could have watched that game and said, actually, Lopetegui masterminded that because he would have seen how United are going to play, let them come at you, let them build overconfidence, and then we'll switch it up, and we've got a different gear to go at. And United,
you may be giving him too much credit there, but
maybe.
He was on United's list of managers they were considering at one stage before they appointed Ten Hag. I mean, they interviewed him.
Yeah, that was for the temporary thing
that for the temporary position
when they went for Ragnick instead?
Yeah. Maybe you're right there. Yeah. There were people who rated him for some reason. I mean, none of those people are at the club anymore. He had a good period, didn't he, Lopetegui, in charge of Sevilla? He got the Real Madrid job on the back of that. Or he was with Spain for a while, and they got sacked by Spain and got the Real Madrid job, and then got sacked by Real Madrid quite quickly, and his career's gone a little bit south. But he's not a bad manager, and he's made 3 changes, but particularly Somerville to stretch the game.
Yeah.
Because he carries the ball really well. That changed the pattern of the game. Right?
Yeah.
He's gone, hey, we're conceding way too many chances. Put Souček in there to stop the supply line. We need to stretch the game and put some pressure on United. Somerville on. And it really worked. And United aren't good at reacting, either on the pitch through leadership of the players or from the sidelines.
But you say that, and they did react, though. They did react, and that was
they reacted when we went down.
Yeah.
74th minute. Suddenly they were like, "Oh, we better attack now."
What I'm saying is there was a reaction. So what provokes that reaction? Is it the manager making the change for Rashford, bringing Rashford off for Ahmad? So I thought Ahmad was quite poor. The defence seemed to work him out quite quickly with him.
He's still a little bit one-dimensional. He does need to find he needs to find a way of going on the outside as well as on the inside, because he's quite predictable.
Well, and to be fair,
plenty of talent, and he's young still. So.
He's not like Rashford, like Garnacho isn't, because they know. I think defenders are getting wise to the fact that he doesn't have a particular burst of pace. I mean, he's a great player, and he's potentially much greater. And
great at carrying the ball, Garnacho. Not very good at being a man one-on-one.
Exactly.
So,
But I think his ceiling is still greater, and he'll work these things out. That's what great players do. Hopefully, that's the next part of his development. But right now, defenses are working it out because they're like going, "Oh, we'll just sit back off him because he doesn't have the burst of pace and all the tricks to get past us." So, I mean, he can still do things in front of them to hurt them. But what I think was United did react. That's the point I was going to make. They did react, and maybe that was West Ham going like a natural flow of a game is you score a goal, you want to protect it, you sit back. Maybe I'm giving United players too much credit. Because one thing that I have said in Ten Hag's defence over the last sort of 6 or 7 months is that when this chaos run has been going, I'm talking with the injuries, not lately, because I don't really class this as an injury hit run, even though we have got injuries. I'm talking like last season when the balance of the side was all over the place. My investment in thinking there's something to build upon was thinking that players were responsive to setbacks. Even though like in the Liverpool game and the Cup game, it came so very late and everything like that, but it was still there. It was still there. There was evidence of it. And did we see that today? Are we seeing that on the pitch at the moment? I don't know if we are. I want to say that there was a reaction because we did see a reaction and we did see an equaliser.
And to be fair to Ten Hag, he made a change to the system. I mean, Ahmad is like for like, although he's going to come inside and play those to wall passes. But Xerxes for Eriksen changed the system completely, and he's also a physical presence. So he won a few headers, didn't he? Yeah. So that changed it a little bit. More chaos than control.
Yeah,
but
of course. Yeah. But and then, by the way, anything that we're saying about that change, I'm reluctant to be too critical. In isolation, like bear in mind, we've been talking for half an hour. I think everyone who's watching and listening will know that I'm being quite critical here. In isolation, we can't be critical of what happened after we equalised because of the nonsense that happened with the decision. And that's where I really got a grievance with what we're seeing with the refereeing, and we have seen it in other games this season, that you can do something so farcical that can completely change the flow of a game, because there's no evidence to say that United weren't on top of that and that United weren't going to win it. There's plenty of evidence to say that the tide was flowing in that direction. However, when you interfere, that's the best way to say it. When you interfere into that, you're then making all this analysis and criticism that we're saying, which is fair. We've got no way of knowing how accurate or how terrible Ten Hag's decisions were that would influence the result of the game. We know how it went up until 80-odd minutes, and it wasn't. The evidence wasn't great, but to have everything determined by
And I'm sure Ten Hag will have spoken about that after the game. I've no doubt. So United equalise. Xerxes goes up for the header. We call it a flick on. I think he missed his header. Casemiro does what he's very good at and puts a header away, top corner. All right, it's 1-1. The momentum was with United at that point. We've got 10 minutes to go win that game. And it's just one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. I can't even, I'm looking at that like 50 times. I can't even tell whether, is it even a foul? They kind of come together at the same time. Has Ings handballed it at the same time as the supposed quote unquote foul? Like, where's the bar to overturn this? Because it's supposed to be an error. Like, it's been a high bar this season. That's the whole point. They've told us, Howard Webber said, it's a high bar for overturning it. They've played on for about 4 minutes after that incident where Manchester City's Michael Oliver is desperately trying to find something in there. I'm sorry to be conspiratorial, but he's paid by Manchester City's owners, which is, honestly, I don't think he's bent. But that's a fucking horrible look. To have a referee paid by another league. I mean, it's weird anyway. But
he just shouldn't be. He shouldn't
by
be.
the ultimate owners of another football club. That is absolute. Like, it just looks bad. Howard Webb cannot believe that this is a good look for PGML, right? If he's going to do that, he can't be involved in games that his owner's club are involved in. Anyway, stop with that, Rag, because I don't actually think he's bent, although it'd be very easy to make a case for it. But he's had to go searching for it. Like, him and the team in Hounslow, wherever they are, at Sky, just outside Sky Studios, isn't it? Looking for something to find there. And you'd have to be really desperate. And then the referee has gone over to the monitor. He's seen it 20 times. And how he can, after those 20 times, go, oh, yeah, I've definitely made an error. I'm going to overturn this. Absolutely mad. I can't wait for that audio to come out. It's going to come out
20 times. I mean, the point of clear and obvious is that you watch it once, you go, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Terrible mistake. Yeah.
I mean, 20 times, obviously, by definition, you've watched it that many times.
It's not clear and obvious.
You can't
even if you were saying, hey, this tool is not just to correct horrendous mistakes, but we were told at the beginning of the season that the way they're going to use it is to correct the horrendous mistake. Yeah. Even if it's forensic, right? You're looking for the brush of the ball on a hand to make a handball, or the microscopic toe onside or offside, or you're looking for where there are milliseconds between the shins clashing and the handball, or whatever it is. Like, even if you say it's completely forensic, you could not find anyone, apart from apparently this ref, who would go, oh yeah, definitely, I'm sure about that one. I just don't know how you can go, yeah, I'm sure.
So,
I'm not sure. I didn't say either way.
Exactly. I mean, first of all, I had to see it the 10 times to understand what they were saying was the infringement.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Like, what is this? Like, someone had tweeted me and they said, so I made a stupid comment about West Ham fans booing Onana. And someone had replied to me and said, yeah. They were booing him.
They also booed Garnacho for getting cleaned out in the first half.
So someone had replied to me and said, I don't know if I'm being soft here, but if you watch the replay, it looks like Antonio's led with his knee to try and win a penalty. He's moved it around. Now, I didn't see it again. And I'm not saying that he did that, because I'm very much, Antonio's not that type of player, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt with that. But what I mean is, if you're going looking for something, maybe that's something to look for. You would say, all right, well, that's happened. He's deliberately tried to injure a player in a quite reckless way. You've got an obvious example there.
Oh, no. Michael Oliver, she got involved and gone, well, clearly Onana's gone with his head onto Antonio's knee. That should be a pen.
Exactly. Well, I'm surprised that considering what we saw.
There is obviously we're taking a piss here a little bit, but there's a serious question, not to divert us away from the other ridiculous VAR, but there's a serious question about whether a player is fit to continue where he's taking a really large blow to the head there. It's like, clearly they've gone through the concussion protocol to make sure he's okay, but hitting the head, he's serious, and
he was.
We got to take that kind of thing seriously. He was down for a long time.
Was a thud. He must have had like a brick to be able to carry on with that, because bloody hell, it looked bad. It did look bad. Yeah. But but the evidence on whether or not it looked deliberate, I'm not saying it was. What I mean is, like, if you're going looking for decisions, I think that you are, and we've talked about this before with different decisions this season, and not particularly the Bruno one, but I'm sure we've talked about a different one in a different game. There's been that many this season where I've complained on this podcast where the input of a referee to add drama into something, but that's not his role. He's not there to do that. He's there to officiate the game fairly. And what this referee and Oliver have done is conspire to create a situation that wasn't there in the rules of the game.
They just made it up out of thin air.
There's nothing in the rules that says what happened there was an infringement that stopped a goal scoring opportunity or that amounted to physical contact enough for there to be a foul.
You couldn't even tell me that their shins have come together. You can't tell me that it wasn't Ing's shin hitting Lick's shin.
There's no threshold there to say that that's strong enough for what they're claiming it to be. It's a terrible decision. It's
absolute bollocks. And
it's not only a terrible decision, Ed. It's the fact that they've reviewed it to get there. So the decision itself, if you make that decision in isolation and you review it, but it was the other way around. Do you know what I mean? It was like they didn't give it, and then they reviewed it, and then they did give it. It's like, no, that's not what that system's for. First of all, that's not what that system's for. It's for a clear and obvious error. So not only is that not what the system's for, you've manipulated what the system's for to give something that wasn't, that's not even on the threshold of what you're rewarding. And it's just absolute. To influence a game like that is one thing, but you are influencing a narrative then. Referees know that, and the officials know that. They're actually creating the storyline, which is likely to ramp pressure on a manager who's already vulnerable.
He might lose his job.
Yeah.
It's also, by the way, it's £3 million per place in the Premier League at the end of the season. So it also has massive financial implications as well and knock-on effects. So, yeah, it is quite extraordinary, as it was for Bruno's red card, as you mentioned, that a refereeing team, with the number of eyes they've got there. They've got the referee, 2 linesmen, the 4th official, the head VAR, and 2 or 3 assistants to look at all the cameras, haven't they? That many people, and they come up with a decision like that. Against Spurs, it got overturned because the VAR and his assistants and the referee got confused, right? They were talking over each other, and they literally got confused about whether it was studs up or not studs up. And one of the VAR officials is saying, it's not studs. And they somehow muddle themselves. So that's why I'm looking forward to this audio coming out, because it will.
They'll get an
it will
apology,
come out, and they will have got confused about something, you know. Yeah. But it's even worse because the referee's gone and had an extra look, and he stood there for ages and gone, "Oh yeah, that's clear."
What I mean is, like for Ten Hag now, that's an excuse for him, and he's a fair excuse because we wouldn't have lost the game without such a I know, but you can't say for sure.
I've got to believe that Ashworth Barada, Wilcox, and Sir Jim. And Sir Jim's 2 mates on the PLC board, looking at they're rational enough to go, no, these are excuses because there's a bigger picture going on here, and so I don't think that excuse will save Ten Hag any more than Ten Hag complaining about injuries in midweek. I mean,
no.
Luke Shaw away from his first team, best team, isn't he?
Of course,
and Colby.
I'm not defending him there, by the way. What I'm saying is, like, you're removing element of doubt. You're removing uncertainty. You are influencing decisions and knowing that you can do that again. Do you know what I mean? Because that does create a mentality issue within the players. And you know what I mean? You are going to have players with their own kind of, I'm going to say agendas, but...
Well, of course, the last thing the rules to what they can want to get away with. I mean, I think I'm not alone in saying this, that I would feel much less angry about that if the referee on the pitch, if he just got rid of VAR and said referee on pitch, called that as a pen.
Yeah.
And I would go, I don't agree with that decision, but it's a human who's gone, I've seen that in real time. I think that's a penalty.
Yeah.
Much better than VAR and the referee taking 12 fucking minutes to go review it 75 times and then still coming up with a nonsense decision.
And by the way, this has got nothing to do with whether or not, like, we've lost the game, fair enough. And I'm not saying that Ten Hag should or shouldn't lose his job on the basis of a decision, because I'm quite with you on that. What I mean is, like, you shouldn't have people influencing that part.
No,
when they know what they're doing with that. Yeah. The one thing I will grumble about, and it's only a minor grumble, if you watch the 5 minutes from 90 to 95 minutes, how long the ball was in play for, and so they've put 12 minutes on the board. I know we played another couple of minutes after that.
Yeah.
But really, the ball was barely in play from 90 to 95. We wouldn't have...
Game management, you might call that, but
I know, but there's still... The ball wasn't in play, so... Well, barely in play, maybe 50, 30 seconds. So there was still probably, and we wouldn't have done anything with it, but another minute of play. And I just think, like, when you are manipulating the decisions as you are, you've got to be careful to not leave yourself open to the kind of stuff that people who are less balanced might start saying it's corrupt and stuff like that. I'm all right, I don't think it's corrupt. I just think there's a showmanship that referees have got involved in over the last 5-6 years.
It's not corrupt, but Michael Oliver is picking up a check from Manchester City's owners. So.
No, what I mean is they are... I don't think it's corrupt, but what I think is the referees have become... And it is the Mike Dean thing, isn't it, really? But I think they've become minor celebrities. And they do like being people who influence careers. Yeah. Careers and trophies and stuff like that. I mean, it shouldn't be like that. They're not there to influence. They are there to officiate. And what we've seen today, and we've seen it in other games. I'm not just saying that it's not United. We're far from the only team to suffer from this. It's just a terrible, terrible decision, and it could affect loads of stuff. It's just, I can't, honestly, we could spend an hour talking on how terrible that decision was. It was absolutely ridiculous.
All right. I think, well, we've ranted for 45 minutes there, which is pretty good. We could spend another hour talking about that. I'm not sure where United go from here. I think it's clear the ownership group very, very reluctant to pull the trigger on firing Ten Hag. They clearly would like a better or best choice option if they're going to do it. Given that they interviewed every single manager they possibly could in the summer.
Yeah.
And then met with Xavi in Barcelona last week. I mean, that's quite a big signal, isn't it? Not saying the smoke signals are coming out of the Vatican, but not far off. I still think they'd be kind of reluctant to do it unless they feel like they have absolutely no choice. And could they fire a manager on the basis of one of the most ridiculous refereeing decisions ever? They have to zoom out a little bit, which they seem to be reluctant to do when they didn't fire him after the FA Cup final.
Yeah.
But we do have a game in midweek. That's the other thing. So it's a 2-day turnaround now for a pointless game against Leicester in the EFL Cup. It's not pointless. It's not pointless
because if we win a trophy at the first of it, then it's a trophy, wouldn't it? But it's not. It's definitely not pointless for the flow of this weather as well, by the way, because I think I was critical of the sort of sounding out of managers over the summer, which I didn't think it reflected well on the new ownership structure. I do actually think that they've handled this quite well because they've not been reactive. The last thing you want from a new ownership structure, even if the decision is right, by the way, is to be reactive, to be seen to be making the change of manager at the first time.
Yeah, they're trying to walk to the right decision, as always. Yeah, it just feels like they're walking very slowly.
No, but in the landscape of there aren't many convincing alternatives, although some become more convincing in idea by each passing defeat, because Ten Hag's argument for himself drops. And in the landscape of what this season now represents, and how close or far, what do they now want to salvage from this season? Because we're not going to challenge for the title. We're still, I mean, we're a good wind away from a Champions League run, but that's not progress. Really. I mean, if you said finishing the Champions League this season confidently, like third place behind City and Arsenal, and they've staved off Liverpool, or even if they finish fourth behind Liverpool, you might have a strong argument enough to say that there's progress there. But
I mean, we're only 7 points off the Champions League spot, so I suppose anything's possible.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a point. It's not convincing, and you want it to be convincing at this point. You want United to look like Aston Villa look at this point, and they don't look anyway. And they look like what we look like is we'll suffer mentally from the results of today, right? I don't feel like there's going to be a response. Like there wasn't a response against Fenerbahce. There wasn't really a response against Brentford. It was a nice performance, but it wasn't anything that made you think, all right, that's comprehensive. That's what we need. Like I said, we've not had these big wins. We haven't even had a comfortable win, really. They've been very, very isolated over the last 18 months. We've just not seen them. So you need to have something there that says this is worth building on, this progress.
Yeah.
And I think that each passing farcical game, regardless of the result, but if it's left open to farce in the way that these games are becoming, the less control a manager looks like he's got.
Sure.
You say how long it can go on for. Like I say, I'm not here to advocate for change, but you look at it, you just wonder. Like the Spurs game, for example, I thought, well, we have to make a change. It's going to make it. There'll be a change making. So there'll never be a point now, unless there's a dramatic turnaround. And I'm talking like, the turnaround after the last World Cup, after we came back and we had a good run of results and performances. They looked quite good, and it looked quite good. And that was convincing enough, and we won a cup at the end of that run. And that was convincing enough to say, all right, we are building something. We need to see evidence of that, and that needs to be now, because those games now, the credit's gone. It's a matter of when that change will happen.
That Carabao Cup win against Newcastle, that was the end of that period of good form. It really kind of fell off a cliff. Have we put together 5 good performances in a row since then?
No, we haven't.
Have we put 3 good performances in a row
haven't.
since then?
No.
It's, I've got to the point with it, and I definitely don't hate Erik Ten Hag, right? There's nothing about him that's grating me other than he just feels a bit like a bit of a wet blanket. So I don't hate him, but I've got to the point where it's hard to see how it could be worse with anyone else in charge. Right now, I do want, and I'm sure the ownership structure do want, a long-term solution here. They don't want to just be reactive to the situation, chuck anyone in there, because I suppose we could get Rangnick levels of chaos by just bringing someone else in on a temporary basis. I suppose we could get that, and it's quite hard to look around the market of managers right now and go, yeah, we can easily put someone in because they're out of work, and that'll be a long-term solution. Much more likely is they're looking around like who's doing well as a manager right now, whether that's Hoeneß or Alonso or Amorim or pick your poison here, right? Yeah. Unlikely that any of them are available in the middle of the season. So a change right now would be a temporary manager, whether that's Ruud or an outside party. They met with Xavi, as well reported now. So they're probably looking at it going, like, could this get worse? Could this get worse? Could it get better? What's the opportunity cost of not making a decision on the manager versus the potential? And at this point, it's like hope, isn't it, that he could somehow turn things around? And I think that's the calculation they're making. I think that's the calculation many fans are thinking about as well. Like, who is said that it's going to do better? How bad could it get? Yeah. Can we turn this around? And what are the chances that it's Ten Hag that can turn it around? I've got to the point where I think there is 0 chance Ten Hag can turn it around. And that the opportunity cost of not making a change is the 80 to 100 million pounds of Champions League revenue. Yeah. And we're not like 9 games in, we're a quarter of the way through the season. It's perfectly possible to make up 7 points with a good run of performances.
Yeah.
New manager bouts or different tactical setup or whatever it is, someone going, hey, I know how to knit these high quality players. This is a group of players that are not 14th in quality in the league. They might not be top 3, but they're definitely not 14th in quality. And well, in fact, they were top 3, and we added 600 million pounds worth of players, and we became 14th. So
I will say then, if you wanted me to provide something that I think like, all right, this is something worth building upon. And again, it's not a really strong argument, and like this is why I'm saying. Like I was surprised he came after the international break still in charge. So I'm not here advocating strongly for saying that there's a definite route to this. So I don't want people watching or listening and saying I'm being delusional by this. But there's at least strength in an argument to say United are recovering from the injury crisis, and the balances in the side is critical to the performances. We have seen when there's balance inside an upturn in those general performance levels, we've seen a lot of force this season in terms of a couple of refereeing decisions that have completely changed the flow of games or results of games. And we've also seen a team that is struggling to get the susceptibility to force out of its system, which we saw against Brighton in the first away game, for example. And like the Liverpool game, it's like, they just can't, when the confidence goes and the heads drop. Now, you do see that in top manager, and we've seen it at other clubs as well. I'm not talking about City. City are a different thing because they've got the resources, unmatched resources. I'm talking a normal club like Liverpool, like Arsenal, the clubs who've had to turn around and challenge. They've all had moments where there's been force. Even under Klopp and under Arteta, there were moments of force with them, and they had to overcome.
Klopp was 8th in his first season. Arteta had a couple of 8th place finishes, something like that. Anyway,
so the point I'm making is it's not a strong a strong argument of conviction. When I'm saying this is what I think, it's just a theory to put out there. Is that, and even Ferguson, for much of that first 5 years, there was so much force. I think he said something in the 89-90 season, and it was after. I think we beat Millwall 5-1 and then we lost City 5-1, and then we a couple of up and down performances like that over the months. And he was saying we're a Jekyll and Hyde side, and we don't know what we're going to get. And he was still 3 years. That was 3 years after he'd taken control of United. So my point is that maybe the last hurdle to make us consistent is to have the man in charge to ride through this storm of confidence, because clearly, I mean, and you don't know, it might be critical. It may be fatal in that, like, it's a systemic error that will never score goals from that. But you can look at it and you might have an argument to say, well, if the force doesn't happen with the decisions and the confidence can be built from all this, and then they start scoring goals and they've got the balance in the side once the players are back, this suddenly looks completely different. And if there's enough...
Of course.
That's a theory,
it's just like 2.5 years into a regime. It's hard. But look, I take your point.
Yeah.
What you're saying is it took Klopp a while to turn it around, and it's taken Arteta a while to turn it around. And it took Ferguson a number of years to build from a base. The counter argument, of course, is that, one, the most obvious one, we've seen Ten Hag, he's no Ferguson.
Of course,
of course. Yeah. And I know you're not.
Or a Klopp. He's not even a Klopp.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's not even tight trousers, Lego hair, Mikel Arteta by the looks of it. And I really hate to say that, because that little shit is a little shit, and I have no respect for him. But hey, so that's the counter argument. The better counter argument, I think, than those kind of sort of surface level comparisons, is to look at the data and the tactical shape. And we have much, much more information on this than we did in Ferguson's time. And we talk about it more openly. And of course, I think the characterization of Ferguson as someone who didn't really know about tactics and was all vibes is obviously completely wrong. Completely wrong. You don't win that many trophies over such a long period and change so many players and teams and styles without really knowing what you're doing. But we as fans have access to way more information and way more analysis, and there's some really great resources, not just like Twitter tacticos, but the coach's voice and others, where you can really dig into this deeply and go, I understand what's going on there, right? So I think that's the best counter argument to he needs a bit more time, is it's just fundamentally wrong what Ten Hag has served up. And the reasons for our failure is 70% Ten Hag, 20% players, 10% injuries, or pick your balance. Maybe that's not quite right.
Yeah.
But it's mostly on the manager. He's mostly got it wrong. And we didn't want to be in this situation where we're changing out another manager again. And I'm absolutely certain that the new ownership team under Sir Jim and the new leadership of the football club do not want to do that either. They do not want to be cleaning up the mess from the previous regime by firing the manager. They are clearly very reluctant to do that. But it's going to get
commendable,
to a point.
by the way, though. I mean,
sure. I'm not criticizing them for it, other than I think probably the opportunity cost of not making the change is quite high. And so at some point it looks like you're dithering on an obvious decision to make. But I do commend them too. They do not want to have to chop and change managers. They'd like to stick with someone that they like. Sir Jim said it not long ago, right? At the America's Cup, he was doorstepped by Dan Roan. And Sir Jim said, we like Ten Hag. We believe in him, but it's not my decision. He's passed it on to the people he's put in charge to make those decisions.
I mean, the rashness of a decision really makes the importance of the hiring even more critical, because you have to get that right.
Of course. By the way, Ruben Amorim has a €10 million clause in his contract, only activates in the summer. Just saying this, I'm throwing that out there. I'm not sure he'd be my first choice partly on account of he's a back three merchant, but also feels very high risk. Oli Hoeneß and Xabi Alonso almost certainly will both move on next summer too. Sadly, there's no chance of getting Julian Nagelsmann out of the Germany job, because he would be my first choice by miles. Assuming that Jurgen Klopp doesn't want to give up his job at the fizzy drinks brand and his years of Liverpool. We couldn't have that anyway.
Well,
the crazy things in football, but that would be the craziest. Anyway, so I think they're looking at this going, we'd really, really, really not like to not have to make a decision right now. We'd really like to be able to punt it until the summer, because there are some good options available in the summer.
Possibly. But I mean,
possibly.
It is in
theory.
But then you've got a different decision, because the best case scenario is that someone comes in and does well, but then you're left in the same sort of situation as we were with Ole.
With Ole, do you make the romantic choice? Yeah, sure. Should just give it Ollie to the end of the season. Clearly, that's what we should do. All right, we got a game against Leicester. I have nothing much to say about that. They're going to change. They'll change the team around. Ten Hag, assuming he's still in the job, will change the team around a bit. I would like to see. Not that I think he's going to bring in 6 kids or anything like that, because I think it's unlikely. But I think he rotates for minutes in these games sometimes. I'd like to see a couple of younger players get a go. Harry Amos was sat on the bench all day today.
Yeah,
come on, I know they want to give him a bit of time, especially to develop, but he's been training with the first team this whole season. He played in the under-21s Newcastle yesterday, so it's not surprising he didn't start today, but I'd like to see him be given a go, because just let's see how he looks in a game against fellow pros, Premier League level.
It was time as well. It's time.
It's time.
He was around, he was being mentioned back in the last season, wasn't
he had a very good pre-season. I mean, before they cut the in-depth coverage of the academy sides due to budget constraints, I think many people were watching him. Anyway, you can see most of the games now anyway. But people were watching him in the academy side and go, yeah, there's something special here. I mean, he looked so comfortable. He looked very good in pre-season. Caveat, it's just pre-season, different types of games, less intensity and all of that. But I'd like to see him. Why not? What's the risk? Really, honestly.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see that. Had quite a lot of younger players on the bench against Fenerbahce in midweek. Will Ethan Wheatley get some game time? I know Josh Xerxes probably needs some games as well, some minutes, but it'd be nice to see Ethan Wheatley have a few minutes. I don't suppose they'd go full wild card and give Chido Obi Martin some minutes. He's 16 years old, but took 13 minutes to score a hat-trick on his academy debut.
But, of that under-17, under-18 group, you've got to wonder, because they're very good. They're very good. You can't give them chances. Yeah, Lacey as well. I mean, I know he's been missing for a long time.
He had such a lot of problems with injuries, but he just looks so high quality, doesn't he?
The talent that he's got. His level, and we say this about Amas as well, that their level of composure, like Manu, when he just knew straight through the system, and Lacey's very much like that. And he just desperate for him to get a run and stay injury-free, because his graduation, really, technically, if he's injury-free, you've got an argument to say he's in Ahmad's spot. Do you know what I mean? And the problem is that area of the pitch is so hotly contested, but unfortunately for Anthony, he's got his sprained ankle now, so there might be an opening there. My point is that you can only hold back on that for so long, and it is obviously the cup games or the European games. There are a couple of easier European games coming up, he says, after so many draws. But
in theory, yeah.
Theory that they're there to give those players minutes as well. So, yeah, I'd like to see some of them. Not so much Martins just yet, but good grief. The hype around him, and to go and justify like that is just...
The hype is partly because we've stolen him from a rival club.
Yeah.
But he scored 32 goals in 18 academy games for the Arsenal under-18s last season, so including a ridiculous number against Liverpool. Was that one of the Premier League 2 games there?
Yeah.
So, and then obviously comes in and scores a hat-trick for his first 3 touches of the game, which was absolutely mental. He looks, from the little we've seen of him so far, to be incredibly composed in front of the goal. Just some ridiculous finishes, right?
Yeah. And I think, I always go back to Rashford. When Rashford broke through, it was a different thing. Makeda got a chance at the time. He got a chance because he was in good form and he scored a hat-trick for the reserves. Rashford got a chance through injuries. He never looked like he was going to be a dominant knocking. There was question marks over him, really. And he came and he took his chances, showed composure in there. Some of these players in that youth setup at the moment look certain to...
The other really talented one is Ibrahimov. God, I always mess that name off. I did when we talked about him before. He looks really nice. Very, very young, though.
But there's a few. There's Biancheri, the Italian lad.
Yeah, who keeps scoring goals. And Jack Fletcher was on the bench, wasn't he, for a Premier League game, the one for last, Brentford game. He wasn't on the bench against Fenerbahce, but played for the under-21s.
Yeah.
the other night. Be nice, a little father and son moment, wouldn't it? If Darren Fletcher on the bench could push his son to get a few minutes on the pitch.
Fitzgerald as well looks very good in midfield. I mean, you never know with a step up, really. And we're talking about under 18s, not even the step up to the under 23s yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very young group.
But
very young group.
The point is that you can't. I know there's a lot of senior players and a lot of senior players who need minutes. You can't always. And United are the best club for this anyway, so it's not really a concern that I've got, but you can't always gatekeep mediocrity and say that you don't allow that chance, because sooner or later those players will get restless because they deserve chances. They don't. I'm not saying they deserve chances in the first team soon, but what I'm saying is if they carry on playing like they are, it will be inevitable. So that's only a good thing,
the stated reason that Obi Martin has moved to United is that he saw a better pathway towards the first team, which is interesting because Arsenal don't have a striker, so he's obviously seen something Arsenal didn't like. I don't know what the conversation was with him.
Arteta's Lego head, or maybe.
Oh, dearie me. Do you think the colours match the cuffs?
I wouldn't like to comment.
With Arteta, I should be very specific about that. I made that joke before about, I think I was joking about Paul Scholes, and someone got the wrong end of the stick and wrote this very long comment in the Apple Podcast reviews saying I was a sexist. And I was like, what? Anyway. Yes. Enough of this nonsense. We'll see if Ten Hag's in charge. I suspect he will be. I don't think they'll make a super rash decision, but I could be saying this and they've already fired him. Who knows? So Jim has texted in
off into the wild beyond to see if we've still got a manager. Like everyone, like, are we back for an emergency podcast re-editing the end of this?
Might be. If he gets the sack, we will come back for an emergency podcast. In the meantime, you can also catch the Tactics Show with Darnish. We'll go through ever-changing tactics at Manchester United in the game versus West Ham. That'll be on Monday with Daniel if he's back. And then we'll do a bonus show next week as well on a topic of some kind. You can also catch us on YouTube where we do some dailies, topic of the day, chatting about something. I very much appreciate your support. You can find the Tactics Show and the Backer Show on Patreon, on Apple Podcasts, and it was supposed to be on Spotify, but after claiming I'd fixed that last week, it was not there. So maybe at Spotify at some point. All right, Wayne. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
Bye now.